Welcome to Frame Rate, the show where we rate frames. My name is Abe Epperson. I'm one of your hosts today. And with me is my other co-host. Introduce yourself.
Michael Swain. Welcome.
Welcome. That's my thing.
Kids of all ages. You were close to the carnival barker voice, and I just needed to go there.
Fucking actors, man.
Yeah.
We're here also with
That's
our special... No, you're just better at it than I am. We're also here with a special guest. Introduce yourself.
Welcome.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
This is Shawn DePasquale from Bunny Ears.
That's a bit. You stole my bit.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the show where we always clumsily start with welcome. That's the signature theme of the series.
Yeah.
And the little word reversal with the frame rate thing.
Yeah.
That's quite clever.
It's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough.
It's barely enough. Well, thank you for coming out, Sean. It
Yeah,
means a
thank
lot.
I can see only half your face. Like
Oh, okay, I'll
Two-Face.
scoot.
No, I like it. It's
Oh.
very moody.
The other half is Phantom of the Opera burned
Scarred
off
over
style.
the-
Yeah.
I was trying to be nice, but yes.
He's referring to the laptop between us, which I usually move completely out of the way, but I want to keep half an eyeball on the waveforms. You know what I mean?
I do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Gotta watch
Real
them,
big
gotta
fish
watch
hat.
them waveforms.
Explain your real big fish hat.
I'm a Real Big Fish fan.
Great.
There's
Great.
nothing to explain. I love ska.
Yeah.
I'll fight you.
RX Bandits?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Our Expanders.
I'm a
the
ska fan
Aquabats.
as well.
The Streetlight Manifesto.
Aquabats are delightful.
That's such that's like coming out of the gate. Like, I will fight you. Like, as your first,
Fight you for
like,
ska. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
I'll
like
fight
that
you.
means that has a story. It means a lot of people have come up to you and like, oh, I get the sense that this
Yeah,
is going to be
people
a
talk
fight.
trash about
Yeah.
ska a lot.
I
And
think
it's like-
disco lovers and ska lovers walk around with a
with
complex.
like a hey,
Yeah.
it's good. Fuck
Yeah,
you.
fuck you.
It's
Let me
not
enjoy
just-
my
yes,
thing.
It's got a storied history. Like it's got
It's true.
its early days are steeped in racial injustice and in inequality. Like it's a great genre of music. Anyway, that's for my ska cast.
That's,
on,
that would
Ska
be a
Network.
good, not much listened to podcast.
That's why I've never done one.
Did you have an issue with the Aquabats going from horns to keys?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Did you have an issue with Bob Dylan going electric guitar?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I had an issue with that.
You
I
care
also,
about genre.
I do. I care about genre. It bothers me when I remember there was a whole Less Than Jake album where they dropped the horns entirely and got very pop punk and to
I
this,
remember that, yeah.
and it's okay. It's
Yeah.
a good pop punk album, but it's not
Sure.
a Less Than Jake album. I'm in it. There's a lot of Facebook groups, like ska Facebook groups. Not a lot, but enough.
lot,
and
relatively
everyone's in all of
speaking.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but there's a whole contingent now of younger people that are like, that was the first Less Than Jake album I ever heard. It's awesome. They ruined it when they brought in horns.
And you're like, brought in horns.
Brought in horns.
You're like, let me take you into the inner ska.
Kids, come in, circle around.
All right, I'm going to bring us onto theme. Speaking of
I can bring us.
genre,
Yeah.
how would you classify the genre of this film?
Does our audience even know what it is yet?
They clicked the title, but
That's true.
it's Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, it's Hot Fuzz.
Second and penultimate of the Cornetto trilogy.
By the
Edgar
way,
Wright.
the special's Ghost Town used on the soundtrack of Shaun of the Dead.
There you go.
Just the title.
Oh yeah, that's true. This time.
Yeah.
Good song.
Like a ghost. Yep, yep. How would I classify this movie's genre? It's a comedy.
Okay.
It's an action comedy.
Okay, but because I guess my point is I think the action is legit.
The action is
Yeah.
legit.
Yeah, which is one of the
but
things I appreciate about it.
now we've seen a lot of movies that took a cue from this movie.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh yeah, it doesn't have to have like shitty, lame action scenes to be a comedy, and it doesn't have to have bad comedy to be like a good action movie.
Yes.
And have married, like, we've seen a lot of comedies with sick action now.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's what's
yeah.
interesting is, as they even obviously call out in the movie, they didn't invent the action with like a gloss of comedy. Bad Boys predates,
Yes. Yes.
all the movies they reference. But what's the other big one? Point Break. But it feels like comedy of a different kind that had not been mixed with action before, in the same way that Shaun of the Dead broke through because you hadn't seen that kind of humor, that
Yeah.
level of complex humor
And
wit.
It's the
in a
level of
zombie thing.
farcical, like it's farce, and it's also jokes per minute. I think if you add those things up to something like Bad Boys, which has comedic moments,
it's more like charisma.
Yeah, and this is not this is not a new trope. I think that Edgar Wright is just very effective at doing it, and it's just what he's good at. Because, like, for example, like Bugsy Malone existed in the late 70s, I want to say.
Is that super funny?
That's not super funny, but it was like a gangster movie.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's Alan Parker, which is weird. But it's like a gangster movie that everyone is played by kids. Like, they're all kids.
I've heard of the premise. Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know that's.
And then when they shoot each other, Bugsy Malone,
they throw pies.
When they shoot each other, the reverse shots is like pies hitting the face of kids and stuff like that.
Which is, it's like Romeo plus Juliet, but 80 years earlier.
Right,
yeah.
but it's like full of, like, that makes it seem like, okay, gimmick film. Yeah, it is, but it also has like funny dialogue where like he's looking at you, kid, kind of stuff.
Kid,
you know,
get it,
get it,
kid?
get it.
I get it.
But I mean,
That's
like they play with that in the same way that I think Edgar Wright does. He does the Rolodex of like what's the next joke. I'm sure we'll talk about, but like stuff like how everyone's named something different in the town, and they're all their names are like Tiller. Or like what a Reaper, Messenger, Staker.
Yes,
and Lower, and they're
you can always find a loose association with what they do in the community.
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
Did you need that? No. Why is it in there? Because that's like the stylistic approach.
I didn't. It's also definitely one of those movies where you notice new things upon many viewings.
Yes,
that was the first time I noticed the name thing. Was
Same.
this, which is probably like my 6th time seeing the movie.
I do feel though that like that it's. I mean, it's part of his stylistic approach, but it's also just like he writes comedies, so everything in it is funny. He makes a point to make everything. It's like this movie feels like a precursor for what Rogen and Goldberg did with Pineapple Express, right? Where it's like a really really funny movie, and then it just like with like real action and people getting like blown up and arms getting chopped off. But they. In Pineapple Express, I think we're making more of an action comedy. They were more riffing on like action comedy movies, and it's like a good action movie with like quips and bits, and like, and this was just like a layered, like everything is a joke in this movie. I picked up so much more. It's probably been like 5-6 years since I watched this, if not more.
Yeah.
I picked up so much more on this watch through in my late 30s than I did in the watch through in my 20s, where I was like, oh shit, everything is a gag.
Yeah.
In this whole movie, from like the interaction with his girlfriend when he's like everything.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Have you seen Space, Sean?
Yeah, love Space. Big fan of. I'm a big Edgar Wright fan. That's why I picked this movie.
Yeah.
I love.
Good call. Good taste.
Yeah. Although I will talk about later my feelings on Edgar Wright post this movie.
I wanted to bring that up.
You want to talk about that at the top?
Here's the other thing is there's such a big overlap with people who listen to this podcast who definitely will have seen this movie already.
Yeah.
I don't feel really the need that we usually do to explain the plot and premise and convince you to watch it and say the jokes are good.
No, let's talk about what we want to talk about.
Yeah, so we might be a little more meandering. So since you brought it up, I was going to bring it up at some point. Abe and I, there was a time in our lives, and we're like same brain on a lot of things and have always worked together. We're like, Edgar Wright is the king shit, like the new movement. As the Coen brothers fade in relevance, Edgar Wright will carry the torch or whatever.
Yes. And this movie and Shaun of the Dead were like, it was like the amping up period that I remember after seeing this movie for the first, 10 times, being like, oh, this next one, skin melting to get to the next movie.
Yeah, Christmas Day.
Oh man, and then feeling like.
And how do you feel nowadays?
So underwhelmed. Well,
we also haven't checked in on this, Abe.
I mean, the movie that followed this was End of the World, right?
Yeah, The World's End.
I despised it.
Interesting. That seems so strong to me. Just someone who loves.
I feel like that because it felt like such a swerve. It was lazy, which he never was before. It felt like it was regurgitating old jokes, like old bits. It felt like it was nudging the audience and winking at them, like, "Hey, haha, remember in Shaun of the Dead we did this, and then in Hot Fuzz, remember we kind of did that." And it's like what made Hot Fuzz great is it didn't do that really, right? It used some of the same people, but it moved on from what Shaun of the Dead was.
I'll just bring up one example because it's one of my favorite meta jokes between the two films, is that there's an identical shot for the fences bit.
Yes.
And in Shaun of the Dead, it's that they do it badly. And in Hot Fuzz, it's that he does it so well that it's also funny.
Yes.
What are you supposed to do as a comedian? Not have a third fence joke in World's End? I would have been disappointed if he didn't.
Sure.
But so there's this aspect of if it's the third thing and you got the formula from the first one and that's why you love it, the third beat is always more predictable than the first or second beats of
I had a theory about this.
Fair.
I thought because I was like, they're going to do these jokes like before I watched it. And I was disappointed because I thought what was going to happen is one of them was going to, it was going to be probably at the later, I hadn't seen the film yet, but one of us is jumping through the fences and they get abducted in the middle and get taken
that would be good.
That would be a third beat that would work.
Well, and that was the problem is like that's a great beat that would have been very surprising and they didn't do it.
It didn't work out.
And then my first viewing, I just felt disappointed in that movie. It didn't feel like
I did as well, but despise is strong.
It grew. Like I despise it now because it represents the beginning of the end for him. I feel like I was so underwhelmed. It like hurt. It made me like sad, but I remember at the time being like really defensive about it to people. I mean, I had other friends that were like, dude, that sucked. I'm like, no, it didn't.
He still did the thing where at the top they list all the bars and then they thematically do all the things.
Yeah.
But again, I agree the third time it's like, I don't know, right now I'm having this issue where the older people in my life, my parents, literally my parents and also people their age I know, keep telling me how amazing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was because they're like, you don't understand. We lived through those killings, and to see it, the power of film to heal it by recreating it. I'm like, did you already forget Inglourious Bastards? It's the same trick again, which is an amazing trick, and I was blown away when I saw it. But it's different when it's the same again. You just can't recapture that magic.
Yeah, my opinion on it is that I actually... He's one of my favorite working directors. Period.
Still.
He's he's in an elite class of a few people that I really like. Some view that I get like thrown, I get beat up on every time I bring it up is that The World's End is not. I think you portrayed it well. It doesn't. Despise may be your own personal take on it because there's a story there.
Sure.
You were defending it. I can see why that would be the case. Hot Fuzz is nearly perfect.
Perfect.
Like from a screen
to the point
level,
where I'm watching it this morning before this,
right?
And I had this thought where I went,
so efficient.
I wish he made a third, and then I went, oh wait, he didn't.
Shaun of the Dead isn't. Here's the take that I have that people don't often like. Shaun of the Dead is only a little bit better than The World's End. It's because it's so new and fresh. If you rewatch that and look at the script atomically, as in how many jokes they're going for, how the thematic kind of through lines like unfurl themselves throughout the story, how airtight the story is, how well thought out the characters are, and how many characters there are, and like just the efficiency of like how he does the frame and how he does characters and how the story plays out. It's not that complex. It's just got this great hook that we had never seen before, and he does quite a bit of the thing that I was just talking about, that it seems like it's an instant classic, which it is.
Is complexity is that
I think
the bar?
Complexity is, when we talk about Edgar Wright, when we talk about how, like, what's his stylistic approach,
that's part of
I
what
think
makes it an
complexity
Edgar Wright movie,
is a very high, like that would be a criterion very high on the list.
Shaun of the Dead, again, because it was the first, it had that complexity the first time. You were
It
like,
did.
oh, this has levels. This is
freshman,
deeper than any zombie movie I've seen in a long time, and it's
spectacular.
It was a much better version of horror comedy than like Scream and those movies were trying to do.
Oh yeah,
like it was like here's a horror comedy.
In the same way, Hot Fuzz is so different from Bad Boys, the kind of comedy they're going to. It also felt to me like it felt like Space the movie.
Yes,
because Space, for people who don't know, definitely watch it. It's this team's sitcom they did in England prior to any of the films, and with Simon Pegg as the lead, and
Nick Frost,
and that just dips into genre. It's just here's the genre.
That's
all of a
point.
sudden they're in a Star Wars.
It's just like a long episode of Spaced where the fantasy is a zombie one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which Which
is
definitely
what Hot Fuzz
predates
did,
Scrubs,
too.
but I'm now realizing that was Scrubs' thing, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Space did that first.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
the
Muppet
genre
Babies
blend.
did it first, to
Yeah,
be
sure.
fair.
Yeah,
Sure.
where we imagine
Where
we're
we
the
imagine what we
astronauts.
are, and then the whole episode we're astronauts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thematically we're working out whatever's going on in our non-fantasy
Yeah,
lives. Yeah.
you know,
I
the
think-
biting meta humor of Muppet Babies that we all thought was so wry.
I guess I think the key to this film is that and Edgar Wright has publicly said this. Like, he said, I know what your head said.
Any number of punchlines.
Any number of punchlines, yeah. Edgar Wright has said that this is his best film.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
it
he's,
is.
he's right.
Yeah, it
Because
is.
I'm not a Scott Pilgrim
Yeah.
fan, unfortunately.
We just covered Scott Pilgrim with Daniel, who's a huge fan, and a lot of people are huge fans. And I would say I watched Scott Pilgrim, and I am a huge fan of the complexity. He did everything that I wanted Edgar Wright to do around a story that I just don't care about at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he still
Yeah.
did everything.
Yeah.
He did all the Edgar
did all the
Wright
Edgar
stuff.
Wright stuff, I guess.
The beautiful thing about movies too is that like sometimes zombie movies are just enough. Like that's what does it for you. That genre mix is way better than like a police, like a Bad Boys too.
I don't care as much
Therefore-
about cop movies, but I still think Hot Fuzz is better than Shaun
I'm just
of the
looking
Dead,
at
yeah.
it from the point of screenwriter, as an XDP, as a director.
Yeah.
Like looking at how the framing works and how the story, how it evolves. It's
you-
just a better film.
Do you think World's End was just a lack of, like, it's just not as interesting of a source
No,
genre
I think it
to
can
start
be
with?
very
to-
much more interesting.
Aliens
and I
can
think,
be interesting.
I think
easily.
But
that's-
for comedy.
No,
How many great, hilarious, because there's also, what's the other alien movie
people
with
like
the alien that...
Spaceballs. I'm fine with it. It has moments.
Sean, have you read our screenplay?
Yeah, we write. have you
We've got
seen
a lot of
our
hilarious-
series, Starship Icarus, little show called.
But yeah, no, that's a good point. But I'd say that
Futurama's
a great
the big one.
crafts,
Yeah.
exactly, a great craftsman or woman would approach this as the subject is more of like kind of the little piece of the wallpaper you start picking at
Right.
that involves the like the entire story. So to me, it's less about the premise being like hooky or like, oh, that works, but it's
agree.
all about the execution. And I do think that, yeah, obviously Hot Fuzz and to some extent Shaun of the Dead are just better executed films.
One point in Shaun of the Dead's favor is Sarah Finowitz. I love him
God,
so
he's
much
so
that
good.
I have
Yeah.
to mention him. Yeah.
Sarah
Um,
Finowitz is so funny.
But that's Sean. You really make me want to rewatch World's End. I don't think I saw it since I saw it in theaters, and I left thinking that was disappointing. But it's still better than all the
Most
other
other
movies.
movies.
So
Yeah,
I guess
absolutely.
it's fine. But I wonder if I watch it again, if I'd be really picking it apart and be like, it's not that good. I don't know.
I think you'll be like, it's like,
Because I'm on the fence about
pretty-
Scott
it's about the
Pilgrim,
same.
and then Baby Driver, I actually was like, oh, hearing you and even seeing the things he tweeted about the premise and the idea of what if a car chase movie was a musical and all the car shit was in time with the music, I'm like, that's gonna be fucking rad.
And then it didn't
he did
deliver.
it way less than I
Yeah,
thought he would.
it didn't
It
deliver.
didn't do
Right.
that
No.
much. Yeah.
I had the same reaction where like the whole lead up to that movie, I was like, "Bet he's back, baby! Return to form. Show me some shit. Let's go."
Like
and then
Drive, very little dialogue. Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, I guess that was cool. Yeah, he sort of did what he said he was going to
there's
do.
cool moments, cool
moments,
montages,
yeah.
but it all doesn't coalesce in the same way. That there's like this cascading effect to
And
Hot
part
Fuzz.
of it, I think, is Edgar Wright's still a really competent director
Yes.
and a good writer.
That's for sitting
Part of
here
it is
talking
my
shit
problem.
on like one of the
I
best
think.
directors.
Because I don't know what I expect from it. Like, I think I figured it out watching this movie. Right? For me, an Edgar Wright movie, first and foremost, I think it's got to be really, really funny.
Yep.
And him not making me laugh, like it just makes me go like, all right, well, it's not you. I know you can do it, dude. I know you can. And then all the substance and the quick cuts and all that stuff for me is secondary because anyone can do that. Anyone can do I wrote it down 5,500 cuts in Hot Fuzz.
Wow.
I looked at it. I counted them. I was like, no, I looked it up, and that's incredible. But like anyone can. Now that he's done it, right, can do that. Like,
Sure.
so that's not a thing that makes him him. Like, what makes him is pairing that substance
With
and
stellar
that style
writing, yeah.
with stellar writing.
Yeah.
Like hilarious. And it's not and it's
like,
not the depth of the characters.
No, it's like the Seinfeldian structure where you're like, oh, at the end, the payoffs, it's just setup and payoff to a degree where the payoffs are so satisfying, you go like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it came back, baby.
Yeah,
I didn't
when-
even expect that one to do
I
it.
did not expect him, the guy who asked, have you ever fired 2 guns whilst jumping through the air and then fired into the air going, ah, no, I have never fired 2 guns, then gone, ah. And then at the end when you realize
does it,
he's doing that in a plot justified way where he actually would do that if he were taking the moment seriously, you're like, it's like the final episode of Breaking Bad being called Felina and all the shit that goes into it. You're like, how'd you plan this out? So meticulously,
It's so
so
good.
far in advance.
Well, we know now that they didn't plan anything out on Breaking Bad.
Yes, but
To their admission, they're like, "Nah, we're good." And I think it's more impressive when Vince Gilligan gets out there and they're like, you had like an end game, and he's like, no, we made that shit up as we went. It's like, that's such a humble brag.
You're like, and yet the title of your finale is an anagram for the word finale that is the title of a famous song about a guy who slowly becomes corrupt.
Yep.
You didn't plan that. Come on, man.
fell into it.
Baby.
We fell into it. I also had friends that worked in staff for that show, and several of them have very subtly, not so subtly hinted at like, yep, they had really good PAs on that show who like would go back at the beginning of every season and would just like, here's all the shit we got to do. Like, here's everything that we left. Here's references that have been poked at. Here's
the
was
cliff
like
notes.
There was a lot of that at the start of each season. And then it was like,
Wow.
all right, let's pick and choose. How do we build?
Nice.
You know, which is the way you should do it anyway. You know, you can't
Maybe.
be too married
It's
to an
a big
ending.
tent. I can see room for lots of, like, Deadwood is a mix of Melch just sort of making it. Like, there were times where he's like, I think EB should be talking to a cow instead of to himself. Bring that cow over here.
Yep.
Go now. Go. All right. Well, let's dive into, after alienating all the real hardcore Edgar Wright fans,
Hot
I
Fuzz.
think we should dive into the positivity of the crown jewel, we think, of his career, Hot Fuzz.
First of all, any movie that
Ape
opens with
Can.
Adam Ant gets
Sure.
a thumbs up
Yes.
in my book. Just
Yeah.
right there. And then I don't know if I'd never picked up on this before. They use Goody Two Shoes as a refrain for that character
Yeah, of course.
throughout
yeah.
the rest of the movie orchestrally. It pops up.
Oh, in the score, there's sound alikes?
In the score, there's like do 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 do. And I'm
Wow.
like, that's fucking Goody Two Shoes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's so brilliant to me. Like,
Yeah, that is
and then it
awesome.
also was on this watch when I went, oh right, because he's a Goody Two Shoes. That
Yeah.
also took me until today. That I
Yeah.
was like, oh right, that makes so much sense. That's sort of his
Exactly.
theme. Is like, because he's like, that's his whole character. And yeah, the movie's my other favorite bit of trivia about this movie that stuck with me from the first commentary watch of this movie I did was that Nick Frost's character was originally a woman named Vanessa,
Okay.
and they really wanted. Well, not entirely, right? There's still like it was a partner character, but they really had this. They had this woman Vanessa, and they really wanted a romantic relationship, like a love story, like
Okay.
Because then they were, and Top
Well,
or
'cause
Lethal
that's
Weapon, all these movies.
That's another
right?
whole set of tropes from that genre.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't make it work, but they didn't want to lose the love story, so they just gave all of her lines to Nick Frost's character.
Yeah.
Word
Yeah.
for word without changing anything. They just gave him all of her lines. And that was in that process went like, oh, cool, that this is the romance. Is we just make it these two guys without changing anything. Which is why he buys the flowers for him in that
Oh,
scene.
wow.
He was supposed to just go give the flowers to like a female character.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yarp.
It's brilliant. Yarp. It's brilliant. The movie is
Yeah,
So
it's
good.
endlessly unpackable. I want to throw it to Abe because I assume you have some notes about the actual filmmaking aspect to illuminate some of this.
Yeah, so this is well, once again we're in the arms of Bill Pope, and he's the arms of the angel.
Is he the standard Edgar Wright DP?
He's Scott Pilgrim. He's
Baby Driver? Do you know?
I
It's fine
think
if you
so.
don't know off the top of
I
your head.
can't remember,
Yeah.
but
But he's infallible.
Yeah,
shots are
he's the
infallible.
fucking Matrix. He's fucking.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he's fucking everything. Like he's insane. Yeah, the filmmaking of this, and like there is a this is heavily featured in a there's a video essay that I'm sure people are very, very know it pretty well. It's the Every Frame the Painting.
Yeah.
It talks about visual comedy. And I really have nothing much to add, but as a refresher, if you haven't seen it, the amount of attention on display in this film for screen direction is like, it's like a breath of fresh air, because it's another one that was really good was Snowpiercer is another example of screen direction. It's like a lost art form that only few directors really abide by these days, where it gives this, it's like, it's what makes Die Hard. Like if you look at Die Hard and look at screen direction, everything is in a scene is propelling a certain way. And like over the scene, if it's a fight scene, if the other person starts to win, screen direction and like the motivation and like all of the flourishes go in a different direction. Something amazing about Hot Fuzz is that he has a great eye for when the screen direction should be in a certain direction. Like he obviously does this thing where he's like everything's left to right when he's going into the he's moving from London to the small
rural
town,
area,
and then right to left when he's like arriving back at home and unhappy, and like as soon as he gets to know Butterman, Nick Frost's character, and like they're having like everything seems to be a little bit more balanced, so he starts to play with like direction being coming at you or going away from you. Look at the scene where he fights all of the town, where he's, you know, the woman on the bike, they all have guns. Everyone and their mums have guns.
Which, of course, was foreshadowed by them driving around being bored out of their minds, and Nick Frost going, "Look at that guy in the trench coat. Bet he has a shotgun in that trench coat." Yeah. He does everything he says is accurate.
Everyone's true. Yeah. And everyone and their mums, farmers and the mums, you know, they all have guns. And he plays with this balancing of frame where when by balance I mean like screen direction, meaning like where something in motion is going and where your eye is drawing left to right or right to left. Like if you're reading an English language or you're reading an Eastern language, like how your eye kind of takes it all in. But also balance in terms of like, is the frame balanced? Is it all on one side or is it all in the middle, or is it like, what's the dominant side of this frame? So these are things that he pays attention to, which I don't need to go into the nitty gritty.
Sure.
But it's one of those things that as a casual viewer, you will never notice. He is impeccable, Edgar Wright. And he's impeccable more than any other film in this film. So I just want to nod out and say that how this is accomplished. It's him and Bill Pope going around and looking at locations and talking about each individual frame. You said something like 5,500 cuts.
Yep.
Every single one was talked
storyboarded like a comic book.
Yeah, and these are not short conversations. Sometimes they are. Sometimes it's like, all right, so we just continue going. Like, so I just need the pan left there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right, but you're talking even in a pan, right? It's a conversation about where we start and where we end.
These are long conversations,
and that's what makes like a Rogan Goldberg feel so different. Is like you said, it's still hilarious. The funny moments are very funny. But you would never like say that it's Edgar Wrighty because they do coverage. That's the other aspect Edgar Wright brings to it, is the writing is so meticulous, but the shot list was probably so fucking tedious to compile.
I think I saw
he is meticulous.
He used to send Edgar Wright used to have a blog where he post his shot lists with like the after the fact, like years after the fact, here's the call sheet.
Yeah.
And he and sometimes like I think in Shaun of the Dead or something like that, it was like 9 shots. Yeah. You know, granted it was like a heavy extra day, but still 9 shots is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another thing that Bill Pope I think it was Bill Pope's idea, but I'm not absolutely sure about this. But I am sure that this is what they did, which is the speed of the shots, like things moving from left to right, whip panning and all this stuff where it whips over and then racks focus and quickly gets something in focus that was like close to camera. He uses all this to be like, boom, like a barrage of speed for a lot of his montages. That's very, very Edgar Wrightian. Bill Pope, I think, had a great idea, which is on display in this show, which is I can't do that. I'm a fucking old man. I can't be like whipping around this heavy 35 millimeter camera and get locking in focus with my ACs, and that's assistant camera for people who don't know. Just like people who do the track the focus. And no, so what he did is they went out and they hired people who like shot sports and like golf. People whose job is to
That's awesome.
Someone slams a tiny I just like spit on you.
No, it's
slams a tiny little ball that goes way off into the sky, and they like just whip over to it and can like rack focus to it as quickly as possible, because that's all they do.
Golf videographers are like the hardest working.
Jesus, that is an insane talent.
They also have real good eyes.
Find the golf ball in the sky.
Find the golf ball,
and you like every time it looks identical. Let's just cut to a blue sky with a white dot in it.
Just add it in post, baby. So
you just use the same shot. Just get it one time.
But that shows also such intelligence from the top down of like, that's so brilliant as far as how you run an operation, because when you get into the broader aspects of filmmaking, it really is just problem solving. You can attack it so many ways.
Yeah.
To know that they thought outside the box, so to speak, and were like, oh, you know who would be great at that? This subset of camera people. Yeah. That's brilliant.
Well, because we're going to have shit exploding and flying around, and it's like, catch it all.
Yeah, it's
great.
Pokemon this
between
shit.
this and Scott Pilgrim, like I can see why it's just like he's a big God's in the details, and he respects it.
And Shawn, you know Kieran Culkin. Have you said this in front of him?
No.
About Scott Pilgrim?
About Scott Pilgrim?
Insert joke.
Because I think the best shot in Scott Pilgrim is Scott at the door, or Kieran at the door with Scott diving through the window. That's probably the best moment. Yeah.
My issues with Scott Pilgrim, I think, partially came from that I didn't feel like it did a good job of translating the source material.
So you've read the comic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I liked it a lot. I wasn't like a super fan, but like it's real good, real fun read. And this movie wasn't the movie I wanted. And I was so conflicted because I love Edgar Wright and I love Scott Pilgrim, and I was all ready. And then I went in and I was like, it felt like too much Edgar Wright and not enough Scott Pilgrim.
Okay.
For my taste.
Yeah.
Like he put too much of himself into it, and I think that
was the action reflective of the action stuff in the comic, or did he really take license with the visual effects?
No, I mean it was reflective. Like he turns into he hits them and he turns into coins and falls to the
I'm like,
floor.
all that stuff is from the comic,
all that stuff
right?
is from the book.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just not. I don't know. My problem is like when I go back and read Scott Pilgrim, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I thought this movie was gonna be.
A lot of the comments in our recent episode agree with you, though.
Yeah.
That are like, you gotta read the comic, man. Or all the characters are built out more. It makes it more explicable.
That was a big part of it, was that you lived with all these characters a lot longer in the comic than you did in the movie, and so the movie felt very. It felt like a hollow version of it's like when you see a great movie and then you try to explain it to someone and then they're like, that doesn't sound so great, and you're like, no, you got to see it though.
Yeah,
that's what the movie version of this feels like, where it's like just him kind of like giving you all like it's what Preacher TV series felt like to me too. Is a great show, and it stood on its own. My girlfriend never read Preacher and loved the TV show.
Okay,
but
I read and enjoyed the comic very much.
The show is cool in its own way, but ultimately the show feels like
Abe's shaking his head. No Preacher.
The problem is,
skip right to the boys.
It feels like someone who read the book and then tried to explain you all the good stuff.
And
you're left going like, I guess that sounds cool, but also it sounds fucked up and weird, and I don't really get it.
I really enjoyed the season 1 of that, because I was like, this is some cool stuff happening, but then it's just like, why is this scene happening though?
Yes.
Like I'm like, keep going towards the cool stuff.
Yes.
Well, that's the other thing about Hot Fuzz. It's so structurally sound, meaning there's nothing you can take away. Everything is load bearing.
And it's so fucking long.
Yeah.
And I made a note. It was 40 minutes until you get to the first murder.
Mm-hmm. I noticed
took 40
that there's
minutes to set this movie's actual plot in motion.
Like Lethal Weapon,
a
a gun would have been discharged much earlier in the film. And that's one of the few ways in which it doesn't structurally resemble the movies that it's parodying. I was like, man, I really thought shit started going down earlier.
Yeah.
But
no, it's a lot of setup. It's getting him there and meeting everybody, but But it can get away with it because it's a comedy first and it's hysterical. So you're not checking your watch going,
no, because everything's
the fuck's the
funny.
plot of this movie? You're just like, give me the next scene. What weirdo is going to do next?
Bring it on.
Bring it
out.
on.
Just
Like,
bring it on out. It's so great.
Like, because it's, I mean, man, the first 15 minutes of this movie are, every line is a joke. It's really impressive.
It's
wordplay.
Setup, payoff, setup, payoff.
Yep.
A word on the something I found interesting looking at the trivia online about this one is it gave me a moment to pause because I was like, oh yeah, and it's making light of a bunch of films that like your Lethal Weapons and stuff glorify gun violence, and that's something that's a huge issue today.
Yes.
And so it's like, will this not like? Is history not going to remember this film that well? Because that would be a shame, in my opinion. And when I actually looked at it, not that it doesn't, because it definitely, like, some of the funniest bits
shootout is cool.
Everything's cool. But if you actually look at like the body count and stuff like that, like for example, the coolest one, the Sergeant Angel, he shoots a lot, but he only actually hits 2 people. The rest of the time he's shooting their guns out of their hands. Like like shooting a chandelier so it drops on them. You know, it's like that kind of stuff.
The epilogue of the movie where everyone's getting booked and you start to realize, oh, he didn't kill anyone in that shootout. That's literally the whole town is getting arrested. They all just got winged and went down.
The dead people are the ones murdered by the secret society, basically only.
And none of those deaths are gun deaths. They're all like much
way
more brutal.
worse.
They're way worse.
They're like a church fire. Replaces your head instantaneously.
Oh god, yeah.
Wasn't there? I can't compile the details immediately well enough, but I remember having the thought watching it this time that their deaths also, it's like the Godfather deaths, how he got shot in the eye because he saw too much. Yes. Their deaths are also, obviously the woman getting stabbed with shears because she was going to give away their secrets. But I think that you can match all of them up.
For the most part.
Everything is lore. There's nothing that's not connected to something else. Like, I love that. We've talked about his attention to detail in writing and structuring the story from the script perspective and making the shots like support that in a meaningful way. He also takes a gimmick that is not that uncommon, which is scene transitions that are clever, like we zoomed into a sheet cake and we pull out of something that looks like cake, but it's a couch. And usually it's that, where you're like, that thing looks like that thing, whatever. We're having fun. We're watching a movie, baby.
All right, baby.
All of his are super meaningful. And
they're
he does them constantly. So he has to justify dozens of them where like something is ominous and you think blood splashed the screen, but it's the bottom of a glass of cranberry juice, which is meaningful because he's about to feel like an outsider because he doesn't drink a pint of lager at the pub.
Oscar winner Olivia Colman is in this film, doing some of the best comedy ever.
Her recurring bit is just that she loves sex.
She loves having sex.
She would fuck anyone on the force at any time.
Always love a little girl.
Which is like, I'm watching The Office a lot now. She's like a Meredith Palmer figure.
She's a police officer. Being a woman has nothing to do with it. Oh, it's helped me a few times.
Cheeky.
Anyway, I'll show you around the place, or I can show you around. I've been around 1 or 2 times. And then do you notice in that scene that Nick Frost behind him goes like this? And looks like real embarrassed when she says she loved everyone.
Yeah. There's something there.
Totally.
By the way, her name is Doris, going off the police officer joke that they do. Just another thing that we didn't catch on because we're not British. That Doris Thatcher.
Doris is the name of a prominent British slut.
Due to the same issue about political correctness in the UK, female officers were often referred to as Doris, regardless of their name.
So it's like calling her Jane Doe or something.
Yeah, something like that. And
or if a guy had been called Bobby. Yeah. Also, the Andes. They make jokes about scaling the Andes.
Yes.
Like every way you can use the name Andy is used. And then speaking of meticulousness on every level, the physical choreography of, I think, one of the top bits that everyone agrees. The second Andy dodging out and back in and out of frame.
Oh, it's delightful.
In like this perfectly rhythmic way that cannot
By the way, that was
be fully explained.
That was not entirely Edgar Wright's.
No,
That was
I know the
actor's,
actor had the impulse like one more little dip,
I'm gonna
and
give
it.
you. It's
so
just,
good.
It's
What a
perfect.
good choice.
There's choices of when to do comedy is such an important thing. Like, there's ones when after rewatching that really got me because it's like times there's a joke and then there's a lull and then you get another big joke that happens at like the crescendo of another scene. But then there's always with Edgar Wright films like little throwaways that aren't like. This is not a time I was expecting like a killer joke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For example, again with Doris Thatcher, they're before Messenger dies at the cathedral. She points at a pig that has two on a spit. It says, "This is me after a few this weekend," and everyone around goes, "Ah!" And it's just like, wow, you are just objectifying yourself. Why is that here? We're having bingo night right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just like it's just a relentless like, all right, here's your character.
There's so
We're
much
just gonna
going
keep
on.
going with it.
There's so many levels of payoff. It's almost weird what you don't notice. I didn't notice till this watch through. Like I noticed that in a couple scenes they deflate the issue by the chief doesn't give a shit. He's just getting everyone ice cream.
Right.
But I didn't notice that every scene meticulously, all they do
Is eat ice
at
cream.
the police
Yep.
precinct
Is eat ice
is
cream,
eat
yeah.
cake and ice cream and candy and shit.
Yep. To the point that he's
It's
walking
like
around with a
children.
bowl at one point.
It's like a preschool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love the bit with Bill Bailey plays two different characters in the film. The actor Bill Bailey.
It's basically there's two twins played by the same
Yeah.
actor, and they're
And
reading
they're
two
reading
different books written by a dude under a pseudonym.
Different names.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Also, they both wear the badge number 101 because it's in palindrome.
Oh,
Like
you're right.
101,
It's like the
yeah.
ones are the twins, and
Yeah,
the
it's
zero
like-
is the
like
void
if you
between
think
them.
about it real stupid, like
Yeah.
the ones could be switched, and that's the difference between their,
Yeah.
like, even though that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I did. I will say that of me, not even weakest, but it's the least. There's no huge payoff
No,
to the
it isn't.
twins, and it made me be like, there's an unusual number of twins who work in this movie because the
precinct,
Andys also
yes.
are not literally twins, but they look very similar,
Yep.
and they're both called Andy. And I was like, if I can criticize the movie at all, which I'm not even.
No twin payoff.
There was no big twin payoff, yes, but I give it all up for the deeply satisfying payoffs about the model village and the fact that going into this movie now understanding
Yeah.
that it's very common in
Little
England,
boxes,
which is not
yeah.
a thing we do here,
Yes.
to have a scale diorama of your village on the way to the village. Every time anyone mentions anything being like big or small or fuck off to the model village, like
Yeah.
look for the wordplay around the model village.
Yep.
It's amazing. And of course, the climactic payoff is them Godzillaing around the model village.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And I also love, as Abe was pointing out, the British sensibility to not just gorily kill everyone.
Yeah.
Yet they are aping American movies that are super gory. Like
Yes.
the villain has to die.
Yes.
So I just love that it called out my American sensibility because when that guy lands and the spire goes through his head, you're like,
Timothy Dalton.
that's the end of Timothy Dalton.
Yep.
And it's such an amazing meta reversal for them to be
Right.
like, that wouldn't necessarily kill
Kill
you in
you,
real life.
yeah.
Even though in American movies, people just are dead because they're
Yes.
off frame.
Yeah.
And he just out of nowhere goes, this really hurts.
Yeah.
I want some ice cream.
Yeah. Speaking of great
well,
bits.
he's going to the right place.
Speaking of great bits with Timothy Dalton, there's another one where every time he talks for the first like 2/3 of the film, he is only pointing out that he's a murderer.
Yes, he's only
that's pretty
speaking in
on the
murder
surface.
metaphors.
Like
Yes.
I'm a slasher of
Yeah.
prices and stuff like that. You know, like
Well, it's so heavy-handed. They did the double reversal where you're like, oh, well, that
It's
will not be
obviously-
true.
yeah.
And then
Right.
it is true.
And then it is true.
yeah, it's by the way, apparently Timothy Dalton is an absolute dream to work with. Like
Seems
he's
like a lovely man.
super,
Yeah.
super professional. Does whatever.
Yeah.
He also thought of the bit of when they took the photo of him to like have him smile. That's like a thing they did before, obviously, to put the
Yeah.
photo in PD.
Yeah.
He decided to, oh, I get what you're doing here. Would it be funny if I smile like my like thing?
Oh,
and
great.
Edgar Wright's like, oh, it was
It's
just
like,
that's what I
that's
wanted.
exactly
and I was
perfect.
I couldn't justify it. I wanted to tell you.
No, just be copying
He's like, no,
yourself.
I get it. He's
Yeah.
like, I'm just gonna do it. So he's like throwing out ideas, but like at the same time, very professional to work with. On the other hand, apparently,
who sucks?
well, I don't think they suck as much as they were getting bigger.
Like
I don't
Simon
know. Here's the
Pegg
sto-
smacked everyone around all the time.
Well, actually, Nick Frost. Apparently, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost had a big falling out.
That's perfect for this type of movie, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hopefully they had it when they were filming those scenes and
Yeah.
then made up
And
in
then
real
came
life.
together.
Yeah, I don't think they despised each other or anything like that. I think it's just there was one case about the lay-by scene, one where they get beheaded, the actors.
What?
The lay-by, that's like where you pull off to the side, and this is a traffic.
Oh.
Yeah,
collision.
where the fake traffic accident
yeah,
is
and
staged.
it's like it's basically it's a scene between Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. Apparently, Simon Pegg was really. This sounds kind of like something that I could also be like, they're buddies, and he's giving him a hard time. But apparently, they didn't talk
Or you're
for like
stressed
hours
out
after.
because it's shooting is difficult.
Yeah, or something like that. But Simon Pegg was really like peeved by Nick Frost always asking PAs to get him stuff, and he was just like, "Go get it yourself," And I don't know. I just feel like that's a weird amount of drama to have.
to
in it.
never speak again.
I don't
He's
know, dude.
like, go get it yourself. He's
George
like, we're done.
Clooney and David O. Russell fist fought in the dirt in
exactly.
front of the whole crew.
It's all very British of a like a.
Yep.
This could be a miscommunication.
Well, it's like
But
those
are we fighting?
the Mitchell and Webb interstitial sketches where they're just shitting on each other.
Yeah.
That's not unforgivable. I'm fine with all that.
Yeah, I'm fine with all that.
But I do, and I never want to like force people to stay in any kind of pigeonhole. But I will admit that Nick Frost without Edgar Wright on his writing team. I'm sorry, Simon Pegg without Edgar Wright on his writing team and without Nick Frost by his side is significantantly less funny to me.
Yep.
Like,
they're a
the
dream.
Hard
movies he's
agree.
done without-
The three of them together.
It's like a Laurel and Hardy thing. There's some kind
Yep.
of magic that it's an.
Yep.
You don't want to force anyone to do anything, but I'm like, just do movies
It's
together.
just I had the same thought watching this, where I was like, I get it. People grow apart. They did like a TV series, 3 movies.
Simon Pegg did that one with the alien where you're like, Nick
Paul.
Frost could have easily been in this. You just didn't want him. You're trying to break up the group.
Yep.
No, it was just not Simon Pegg. They were both in that.
Oh, was Nick Frost in that?
Yeah.
Right, there was just no Edgar Wright.
There was just no.
There's no Edgar
involved.
Wright.
Yeah.
That was
But-
the thing, is the writing
It was
wasn't
still
Right,
Nina
because the
Gold.
writing and direction wasn't
Yeah.
there, and then
Yeah.
when one of them's not there, there's always something missing when the three of them just work really well together. I think it's like
Yeah.
you said, it's like
Yeah.
they're just, it's like the Workaholics, I guess, are another good example of like those three guys
They're tough
together.
to break out.
They
Yeah.
work really, really well off each other and together, and then like when one of them goes off, it's like, but those other
And
guys
they
I
are
also-
think a lot of
you
the
know?
fuel of the Always Sunny cast is the magic of, man, you put any 5 improv comedians together and have them yell mean stuff at each other, 90% of the time I'm like, this sucks.
Yep.
They have this amazing ability
Yep.
to yell over each other in a very funny way
Yeah.
Yep.
that's like magic to that group.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about Nick Frost being drunk in The World's End is one of the best drunk performances of all time.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I also noticed on this watch that, because I tried to parse out the murder more carefully this
Yeah.
time, everyone who dies, it's this amazing puzzle box because every death is set up in such a way that there's an easy conclusion to jump to how it could be a real murder.
Yeah.
But if you're a savvy viewer, you know, of course, it won't be a real murder. Someone will have been staging it. It'll be something.
Yep.
Then when you start to suspect that it's some kind of secret society, there is a second like way to interpret the death that calls out very clearly, like is clearly structured for you to pick up, of like, oh, they did it for this reason, like because that guy was banging that woman and
Right.
he's married.
There's
And
3
then
red herrings.
There's 2 layers of
Two
red
red
herring
herrings
and
and
the
the
real
reveal.
answer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then at the end they go, no, it's because his performance in the play was so bad.
Yeah. Oh,
So there's always 2 red herrings before the reveal in all 5 murders. That just must have been hard to sit and think of.
so hard.
Yeah.
I wrote the ending. I wrote those down because I appreciated so much what it ended up being. And you're right. It's like it's so hard to write one good mystery. Like to write 3 good mysteries where 2 of them are fake, and then the third one plays off the other 2, but in, again, the funniest possible way, right? Because
Right.
like they had 3 possibilities, and the final reveal, like, it's like he was a bad actor, she had an annoying laugh, he had too big of a house, he had bad grammar, and she wanted to move away. Like, those are the 6 reasons.
And
they
she
give
was
it,
a good
she was a good florist.
citizen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she was
they
a good
didn't-
florist, and we didn't want to lose her.
Yeah.
In talking about the ending, there's 2 things that stuck out at me that made me go, yikes. Gypsy scum.
Sure.
I went, ooh, all right,
Yeah,
fair, okay. And then, man, we want to make Sanford great again. I went, oh
well.
boy, the cabal of angry,
Yeah.
evil white people wants to make something great.
Again.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
When it was
Masa.
better for
Right, when it was
Yeah.
better for us back then, before all of the bad people showed up, all of the gypsies and all of the, and it's like,
Well, dude,
yeah.
it predates this stuff coming to the fore of culture, so there's no way it's intentional.
No, that's
but
what- that's my
also,
point.
after like the slew of black kids being shot just because they're in hoodies,
Yep.
it's weird that there's a recurring theme of like
call them the
there's
hoodies.
these kids in hoodies and they call them hoodies and they want them out. And what's revealed very clearly is they're just kids hanging out. Like they had nothing to do with any of this. Those are just the kids in the town who
Yep.
are there. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and none of it
Weird
could have been
graffiti.
planned.
He didn't mean that.
No, none of it was
it's
in the
not like a
zeitgeist
shout
then.
out to Trump.
No, it just, in watching it now, you go like, oh man, things
Weird.
don't really change. Also,
Yeah.
like, because what he did mean was like, yeah, there's probably a bunch of like awful old people in charge of many small
What
communities.
do old
that
people
are,
think?
Right, what
that
old
the
people
past
think
is
that the past is
everything's
better,
shit
that
now.
everything should be
Yeah.
back how it was, that anyone new and different that comes in the town that's different from how
Is
they are
scary,
somehow
yeah.
scary and bad.
Yeah, that's the front and center of the satire. I mean, it's all said in like the oldest, most curmudgeon of the neighborhood of Wash is like, we got to do something about these clowns, and it's just like
Well,
it's
it's
literal
also-
clowns,
it's
like
literal
it's a
clowns.
Monty
Oh my God.
Python
I
sketch.
forgot one of my favorite jokes because I think it's the closest the movie comes to breaking reality in the way Monty Python did
Yeah.
continuously. This movie bends reality but rarely breaks it. But there's one thing that absolutely is a cartoon joke, which is they keep referencing the human statue covered in
Dope.
silver and how like we got to deal with him. And then at one of the final meetings, they're like, it's been dealt with. And then in the final chase, Simon Pegg falls into a pit of skeletons. And the
Yeah.
silver statue guy, completely not rotted. Like,
Yeah.
that's the reality breaking part.
Yeah.
He's just there as a dead silver statue
Still
guy.
Like he's a robot.
Posed
Yeah.
in fear
In
like he
fear.
was killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mime. There's reality that's the reality breaking one. There's a few times that the reality bending near breaking is like really fun for me. Like when Broadbent, after he makes his choice of like he's trying to get Danny to come back to his side, it's in
Yeah,
the bar,
join the dark side.
and he shoots out like the chandelier, I think I want to say, and so there's like sparks flying everywhere. It's a cool shot in slow motion, and Jim Broadbent like growls like a tiger and leaves.
Yes.
I actually thought that shot was really effective. It made me find him a guy. It was like, okay, we're an action comedy, and now it's the action part where we actually want you to be at least invested enough to be like rooting for it, like a
Yep.
sports match or something. So this guy who's just eaten cake and been like goofy has to suddenly be legitimately menacing, and it worked for me.
Yeah,
I thought it
I
was
actually think
menacing
it was a
shot.
sound effect.
Oh,
I think
it's-
it's
yeah.
definitely
It's
an effect,
definitely
right?
a
It's a
sound effect.
tiger sound effect under
But
that scene.
did you read it as a joke? Like that made you laugh?
I
I thought it was
I
cool.
didn't. Yeah, I thought they subtly added it just for exactly the reason you said. It gives like this drama, this like, ooh.
I don't think it's
Man.
mutually exclusive. I think it's
Sure.
on the tail end of like a poignant moment, so
Yeah.
that like it does have all like he's turning his back literally on his son.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that like they, in order to make the tone work, it can't be like a darker tone. It can't be like he looks at the wall, looks back, sheds a single tear.
He
and
can't go,
walks
"What have I
away.
done?"
Right.
It's not that
You
kind
know,
of movie,
and it's
yeah.
like because that would feel out of place. So it's like
Yes.
just I think it's the filmmakers knowing how their tone is achieved, and it's like it is laughable to me because it's like Jim Broadbent.
Yeah.
growling.
Sure.
But at the same time, it works. You're
I was
absolutely
wrapped
right.
up in the moment,
Yeah.
I'll admit.
Yep.
And it also just again calls the level of detail of every aspect of filmmaking, audio, visual. Like it reminds me of when we talked about Saving Private Ryan, our first episode of this podcast.
Yes, it's true.
How much we admired the lion roar being mixed into the shot of the tank coming over the
Yeah.
ridge when you're like, this feels like Jurassic Park. Like, I'm so fucking scared of this one tank. Whereas you see other war movies where they just put a camera and shoot a battlefield, and you're like, you paid for this crazy shot with 50 tanks, but I don't feel it.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, why Saving Private Ryan is such a classic, is it's the most viscerally impactful war movie released up to that point.
Right.
Everyone was like, whoa, that felt like war. Like, whoa.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like how much context matters. Like this tank, you know, you put a tank against like a vulnerable situation, a tank is gonna really fuck that shit up. If you put like 4 tanks, you're like, oh, that's even worse. But then on the other side, you also have 4 tanks. It's harder to make that.
You have to show a
dynamics work.
wider shot. It's not going to look
but
as
seeing a bunch
intimate.
of people who are super vulnerable and a tank would mess up everyone's day.
It's why the
you
trans-
immediately are like, that's the worst tank of all time.
It's why like the Transformers movies aren't impressive.
No.
Because it's just like giant robots,
It's
and then it's
another
like
hit.
50 of them smashing into each other against the buildings. Like, all right.
To the
a
point
lot of
where
animes
like,
have that problem too. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh, that hit seemed very impactful. Didn't seem to
Didn't
do
seem to
much.
do anything,
Kind of like
so-
a video game where
Yeah.
you go up to the boss and you just like shoot them. In Borderlands, there's like this. I was just playing this game, the new Borderlands, where it's like, the boss is just like, yeah, you just keep shooting like thousands of bullets in this one spot. It's like, yeah, I'm really fucking this guy up. Took out another 1% every 2 minutes.
yeah, there's a lot of action movies where the action sequences these days are just a bunch of shards of glass and metal in like a cool
in the cool
pattern.
configuration.
Like even Venom is
tumbling.
that. They're like, it's not glass shards, it's shards of goo randomly flying around the screen now. All right, but back to Hot Fuzz.
Another highlight for
Yes.
me, same scene you brought up before when he falls in through the floor and they're paying things off as he's running
Yeah.
is the great big bushy beard on this.
Yeah.
Which
Skeleton.
pays off. Like, he had a
God.
great big bushy beard,
Oh,
which is
he's
probably
still
my
got a
favorite
skeleton
line,
beard,
and he
yeah.
still has a great big bushy beard.
That's your predecessor had.
Yeah.
He got along all right, but he had one thing you don't have.
Oh yeah,
Great
what's
big-
that? He had a great big bushy beard.
Yeah, and you see his skeleton as well. That's some Simpsons level
It's-
payoff.
Yes.
I noticed from the ending this time, because my problem with the Scott Pilgrim ending is the message seems to be he gets the girl and then literally physically forgives and accepts a manifestation of all the asshole-ish parts about himself. So I left confused. I was like, wait, was that the happy story of a guy who won his girlfriend back and stayed an asshole?
Yes.
I think the film version is.
It is.
And what Edgar Wright's interest really was all the action sequences he probably didn't even care that much about, like the moral. But applying that lens to Hot Fuzz, I think, is another reason why it's so much better, because it works on every level.
Yeah.
Like the theme of Simon Pegg, I forget what's his name.
Sergeant Angel.
Sergeant Angel. Of course.
Or Sergeant Angle if you're.
Yeah.
if you're dead.
According to
Nicholas Angel.
Nicholas Messenger.
Yeah.
It's simple, but it works perfectly. He just wants to be both recognized and successful, but also rigidly good.
Yeah.
Then he finds this group that are so rigidly good that he sees the faultiness of his ways, and it makes him get over his desire to be so successful and so amped up all the time.
Yes.
Whereas Nick Frost is a slob and is like, maybe I should get my act together a little. And now it's so revealing to me that it was a love story, because it is like two people who are a good match start dating, and this happens, realize you have some differences, but I like this relationship. I want it to work, and you change a little, and you meet in the middle.
And you meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and by the end, they're like the perfect
A good couple.
To the point where even that last line where like he makes some joke, and then Simon Pegg makes like some like mildly misogynistic joke, and they're like, "Yeah, you get it now, buddy."
The gang works. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's
gang.
like but it's all it works, and then he gets hit in the head with the trash, which is my other
With the what? I forget
with the
that.
trash can.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
Which is the second time that
fuck,
happens.
Yeah.
And man, I'm a sucker for anything. I'm such a sucker for like dumb physical
I
comedy.
love shit coming off frame and smacking you dumbly in the head.
Yeah, slowly or quickly, it doesn't matter.
Especially if you underreact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God,
Like-
that scene where they're all in the
in the masks.
body bags and they
Kate
can't tell
Blanchett,
who's
by the
who
way.
is so
Yeah,
good.
Kate Blanchett.
His ex-girlfriend
Yeah.
is Kate Blanchett.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't
it's Kate
tell
Blanchett.
'cause
That's
it's
so
covered.
funny.
Yeah. And then he goes, "Oh, who are you with, Dave?" And she goes, "No, I'm not with Dave." And then she goes, "I'm with Simon." And then the guy next to Dave turns around and goes, "Hey."
Yeah.
So
Which
good.
I think is that's somebody as well.
Santa
Really?
Claus
It's
is
like Ed
Peter.
Begley Jr. for no reason
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
Santa Claus who stabs him is Peter Jackson.
Really?
That's
yeah.
Peter Jackson.
That's a single
Yep.
shot of a
That's
knife going through a hand.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you see scraggly hair, which
You're
is
like,
Peter.
is that George R. R.
Gross.
Martin? No, it's the
Yes,
other one.
Peter yeah.
George R. R. Martin.
He has no hair.
That's true.
No.
All right, final thoughts?
If you haven't seen this film, go see this film.
Right.
It's
1000%.
It's a masterclass in editing. It's all the disciplines of filmmaking: cinematography, editing, direction. It's really, really funny. For my money, one of the best, funniest films of the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
To the degree that we usually unpack moments more, but I'm like, how could you even choose?
Yeah.
Every moment is just...
Everything
Yeah.
is great. Everything works. Every scene has every character in every scene has like a purpose and a payoff. Like there's nothing that just like there are no points. I at the end, towards the end, I was like, man, this is a really long movie, and I started like catalog like, all right, well, what would you pull out? And it's like there's not really much that you could pull out of this movie without losing major aspects of other things that pay off or set up. I mean, you could like collapse and condense maybe some of the opening, but like, but then you'd just be losing like.
But there's
jokes,
also
and it's a
Edgar Wright
comedy.
doing his thing. Like he's those music montages are where he really leans into look at my visual iconography work, and that's what I love is you can watch it on every level and be delighted. Like. They didn't skimp anywhere. You can watch it and just appreciate the background jokes and the set design and art direction. You can watch it just thinking of it as a great script. You can watch it appreciating the acting. Yeah. The direction is hitting. The editing is hitting. The sound design is hitting. It's rare that a team is so competent across the board in every dimension.
Even down to filming the paperwork scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, which he made dynamic and interesting and wanted to put in there. That was another thing I read was that he really very much, everyone they talked to when they were doing research, every cop they talked to was like, I don't know, it's TV's bullshit. They never get the paperwork right. So they were like, we're going to put paperwork in this movie.
And I understand that also helps to not aggrandize. It has this very interesting feel of like, it's true.
Yeah.
You admire Angel's like good deeds and outlook, but you don't think of him like John McClane. You're not like, he's going to shoot anyone in the face and that's cool.
And he's not a real cut. And then he goes home at the end of the day and he's like, clean up, boys.
No, they show him have to do a mountain of paperwork.
I love it.
Yeah.
He's
in
like
fact,
excited.
the musical choice they use is a track called Bell Bottoms by John Spencer Blues Explosion, which he's used it in Baby Driver as well, which is this really gritty punk band. It's like, it's like trying to build up like this paperwork is badass.
It's fucking awesome. Well, I mean, down to the scene where he's like, I don't have where he's like, oh, that's gonna be a lot of paperwork, and my pen's running out, and he's like, oh, I've got two. And he's like,
like a gun.
Like it's like that gets him as jazzed as like going into battle.
And I think that's weirdly prescient too now, because like the police we actually need on the force would be police who are in it to help the community and more excited to fill out paperwork if it's going to have a positive impact than in it because they like cop movies. That's scary.
Yeah. Exactly.
By the way, Bob, the guy I just found it, Joe Cornish, the director.
Oh, Bob, the guy in the clean suit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Joe Cornish?
Yeah, it's just, so
that's
it's
awesome.
Peter Jackson, Joe
Hey.
Cornish.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like let's get a bunch of like directors that I'm a fan of, and like apparently we're all friends or whatever.
Yeah.
And he solves the case while he's there for that one scene.
Yeah, for that one
He solves
scene.
their
Yeah,
case.
and Kate Blanchett's there, and Edgar Wright even has a cameo of himself as a shelf stacker at one point.
In the
the
grocery
supermarket?
store?
Yeah. Also, the Jim Broadbent didn't like. He just wanted to do the movie. Like he seeked out.
He didn't audition and they
Edgar
didn't
Wright.
seek him?
The role was not written.
How'd he find this?
Oh, the role didn't even exist.
Oh,
He
was it
just
gonna
like,
be-
He created
Can I
that
be
role
in
for
your movie?
which is
That's
so.
awesome.
That must have been so early in the writing process,
Yeah.
or they must have broke down all the walls because he's the key.
Yeah.
Does that mean the final villain was going to be...
I think it must have been a conversation fairly
Petey
early
boy.
on where he's just like, Jim Broadbent will do a movie with us.
And then they're like, well, we already
Well,
do this thing where we have
we-
two red herrings than the truth, so how
Yeah.
about two bad
So
guys?
who
Yeah.
knows? But yeah, it's insanity.
Well, the
This-
two bad
the
guys
star
thing-
power in this.
was like it works. It works for the types of movies that
Totally.
they're nodding to. Also, I mean,
Yeah.
Shaft, had two bad guys.
Yeah,
and,
where you dispatch the guy, and there's no better way to make the audience feel like they got their money's worth than to go, surprise, that wasn't even the climactic action sequence. One more, here we go.
Yep. and then this movie tops it all off with like, oh right, and remember that bomb? We're blowing it up because like there's no point. That's maybe my one nitpick. It's
mine and the
there's
barn.
no point to blowing up the entire police station. No one dies. No one
Well,
gets
I
hurt.
think because
like,
they're
it's just
like-
bad boys. Yeah.
They're like, how could the whole movie that's this kind of movie go by in a building doesn't
about to set
explode?
off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You gotta blow up.
Gotta blow
some
it up.
shit.
Yep.
Lethal Weapon. You gotta blow that shit
Gotta
up.
blow it up.
Man, the star power in this is insane. I always forget, because we casually mentioned the Timothy Dalton, but like Bill Nye's in
Bill
this
Nye's in
film.
this, yeah.
Steve Coogan's in this film.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obviously Olivia Colman, but Martin Freeman is in this
Yep.
film. Like it's just like let's bring out all the like famous British actors now.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised like David Tennant isn't in this film.
No Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Are you
there's a
excited
couple.
for his next movie?
I don't know anything about it.
It's
I'm
a
not up on the
psychological
news.
horror film,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah,
It's-
apparently.
Someone saw Get Out.
Somebody saw Get Out.
Somebody
It's
saw
like
Get
that's
Out.
the new movement in
That's the
film,
new-
which I think it is.
Well, hey.
But like,
more
it
power
doesn't
to him.
excite me because there's no comedy in that, and I really want him to make
Again,
funny
I don't-
movies. I
You
don't
can't
know.
force anyone to
No,
do
I
whatever
know.
they want,
I
don't want
know.
to artistically once they have the clout, but I agree 1,000%.
Yeah.
Make more comedies, Edgar Wright.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah.
or like every other movie, make a really funny movie,
Yeah.
then take a couple years off, make whatever
Yeah.
other stuff you want to try, but like go back to the to what you really. I mean, you don't. It's weird to come from like Spaced and Shaun of the Dead and this movie and even World's End, which has a lot of funny
Yeah.
beats, and then be like, nah, I'm done with that. Here's my psychological horror film.
Yeah.
And Driver.
Well,
Baby
I'm
Driver.
going to look it up right after this.
Yeah.
But,
I'm still gonna watch.
Everyone
it.
should watch this movie.
He's still,
Yeah.
he's still
this one, yes,
Yes.
definitely.
For sure.
Hot Fuzz! And Sean, thank you again for joining
Thanks
us.
for
and
having
for
me.
picking
Yeah.
this movie.
Thank you. This is a good
delight
movie.
to re-research. I watch this like every year.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
exactly.
great
So it's
movie.
like easy to research.
Yep.
Yeah, you're a big wheel over at the old Cracker Factory, which is what I call bunny ears.
That's right.
Tell us a little about what you're doing, what you're excited about, where people can find you.
People can find Bunny Ears at bunnyears.com, Bunny Ears Web, and on Twitter, and Bunny Ears Podcast on Instagram. We've got podcasts galore. And we're most excited about, as of next week, which is probably when this is around.
Maybe.
Maybe.
No one
Or
knows.
by the time this is around, you should
That
check
will be
out
true.
Rewind Rethink, which is a new YouTube series that we're launching with former Cracked writer Lydia Bug.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
every week she talks about something that you might fondly remember from your childhood and proceeds to find the one most disturbing aspect of it and explain it to you.
Zoom in on it.
Yeah, so like she, her first one, she does Rainbow Bright, and she talks about how ultimately in rewatching the origin of Rainbow Bright, she realizes that Rainbow Bright is a horrible dictator who took over a land and enslaved everybody in
Like
happiness.
Willy Wonka style.
Yeah, it's really good. She does some real good stuff. A lot of fun stuff. So yeah, recommend people check that out, and then all the other Bunny Ears shit. And
Yeah.
no one wants to follow me personally. It's just
Oh, okay.
it's just
All
me
right.
screaming about Trump
Yeah.
every day. And it's
So play Toe
fine.
Jam and I'll go to bunnyears.com.
play Toe Jam and Earl back in the groove.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. We
Sure.
also made
Why
a
not?
game.
Well, I love the original and the remaster.
Yeah.
I love that game.
It is a lot of fun. Have
Every
you done any
version.
of the 4-player like co-op stuff yet? All the online
I
stuff?
only got up to two people. I need to do it with 4 people. That seems nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. To just
All right,
fuck with
dude.
people. Thank you so much for
Thank
having me.
you.
Yeah.
Till next time.
Till next time.
Say
Happy
goodnight,
trails.
AB.
Good night.
Excellent. This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!